The Ritz-Carlton's grand ballroom sparkled with wealth and pretension as I settled into the deliberately wobbly chair at the far corner table, the one my sister Catherine had selected especially for me at my father's 65th birthday celebration. The chair, like my deliberately basic suit, was part of the carefully crafted image I'd maintained while quietly building my empire. "At least Sarah got a seat," Catherine stage whispered to her investment banker husband, James. "Though I suppose the broken chair suits someone who couldn't even keep a corporate job." If they only knew that while they mocked my seating arrangement, my company, Titan Global, had secretly become one of the largest private corporations in the world. But that was the beauty of being underestimated. People reveal their true colors when they think you're sitting on a broken chair. "Couldn't you at least dress properly?" my stepmother Diana hissed as she passed. "These are important people in business. Important people whose companies I secretly owned." Titan Global had spent 5 years methodically acquiring controlling stakes in major corporations, though we'd kept our ownership structure deliberately hidden through a labyrinth of shell companies. My phone buzzed silently, a message from my chief operating officer, Michael Zhang. Wall Street Journal ready. Company valuation confirmed at $12.8 billion. All major networks standing by. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, New York's skyline glittered with possibility. Each lit office represented another company under Titan Global's quiet control, though they thought they were independent powers in the corporate world. "Remember when Sarah said she was starting her own company?" Catherine laughed to her audience. Dad offered her a management position at Chin Industries, and she chose unemployment instead. The irony was delicious. Chin Industries actually manufactured components for one of Titan Global's smaller subsidiaries. They just didn't realize their biggest client was controlled by the daughter they'd given the broken chair. "Miss Chin," a voice whispered. "Lisa Wong, my head of strategy disguised as a server. Goldman Seo just arrived. He's asking to meet Titan's owner." I nodded slightly, watching another wave of corporate elite enter. Each of them would soon discover that their company's major shareholder had been quietly observing from the wobbly chair, letting them play at power while actually controlling the board. "Still living in that studio apartment?" My brother Mark smirked, adjusting his Rolex. "When you're ready for real work, I might have an entry-level position." The studio apartment was actually a penthouse in a building I owned. The real work he offered was at a company whose major decisions were quietly controlled by Titan Global's holdings. My phone lit up again, this time from our legal team. "SEC filings complete. Ownership disclosures ready for 9 p.m. reveal." I shifted in my wobbly chair, watching my family bask in their imagined importance. In 2 hours they would learn that while they were busy mocking my seating arrangement, I'd built the largest private corporate empire in history. "Sarah," Diana sighed with theatrical concern, "your father's friends keep asking what you do." "It's embarrassing." "What I do?" I silently controlled half of the Fortune 500, owned significant stakes in major global corporations, and was about to reveal myself as one of the most powerful people in business. But they'd learn that soon enough. My phone buzzed again, Bloomberg exclusive ready. Titan Global emerges, the hidden giant of corporate America. Through the ballroom's windows I could see Times Square's massive screens being tested. At exactly 9 p.m., they would display Titan Global's logo and my net worth to the world. The same logo Mark had called simplistic when I'd shown him my business plan 5 years ago. "Miss Chen," Lisa whispered as she passed with a tray, "Microsoft CEO requesting urgent meeting with Titan's owner regarding the acquisition." The acquisition they thought they were orchestrating, not realizing I already controlled both companies involved. The beauty of true power is letting others think they're in charge while quietly owning everything. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mark's voice boomed through the sound system. "In 1 hour, Chin Industries will announce the largest merger in corporate history." I shifted slightly in my wobbly chair, suppressing a smile. In exactly 60 minutes, a very different announcement would steal their thunder. Around me, corporate titans gathered in anticipation, none of them realizing that the most powerful person in the room was the woman they'd relegated to the broken chair. "Still can't afford a decent watch?" Catherine smirked, flashing her Cartier. "I suppose that's what happens when you reject real career opportunities." My basic watch was actually a prototype of Titan Global's latest acquisition, a Swiss luxury brand we'd bought through a series of shell companies. But that was part of the carefully crafted image. While they focused on displaying wealth, I'd been quietly amassing real power. "Sarah," Diana called out loudly, "why don't you move to the back? We need these front tables for actual business people." The actual business people were executives from companies Titan Global secretly controlled. I'd orchestrated their mergers, approved their strategies, and shaped their futures, all while they thought they were independent powers in the corporate world. "Ms. Chen," Lisa whispered as she passed with water, "Jeff Bezos is requesting a private meeting with Titan's owner about the cloud computing partnership." I nodded slightly, adjusting my position on the wobbly chair. The partnership they thought they were negotiating was actually a complex acquisition strategy I designed months ago. Sometimes the best deals are made by the person everyone thinks can't afford a proper seat. Until revelation. Through the windows, I could see news vans gathering outside the Ritz-Carlton. They thought they were here for Chin Industries' announcement. Instead, they'd witnessed the emergence of America's most powerful hidden force. Remember when Sarah tried to pitch her business plan? Mark laughed to a group of CEOs. Dad said it looked like a high school project. A high school project that had revolutionized corporate America and quietly gained controlling interest in half of the Fortune 500. While they mocked my supposed naivety, I'd been orchestrating some of the largest acquisitions in business history. Lisa murmured as she collected empty glasses. CNBC crews in position. I shifted again in my chair, watching my father hold court near the main table. Richard Chin, corporate titan, celebrating his 65th birthday while his youngest daughter sat on a broken chair. If he'd bothered to check the ownership structure of his recent contracts, he might have noticed they all led back to Titan Global. "Sarah," Catherine sighed with fake sympathy, "you could at least try to network. These people run the business world. People whose companies I owned, whose strategies I controlled, whose futures would be shaped by what I was about to reveal." The waiters began serving the main course, carefully following Diana's instructions to serve my corner last. The $600 per plate dinner would be cold by the time it reached my wobbly chair, but that was part of the performance. Chin Industries is about to become the most powerful corporation in America, Mark declared, champagne sloshing. Dad's announcement will reshape industries. My phone lit up with another message, this time from our PR team. All major networks aligned. Times Square billboards tested and ready. "Sarah," my father finally addressed me directly, "at least try to look professional. You're embarrassing enough as it is." I met his gaze calmly. "Oh, I'm very interested in looking professional, Dad. In fact, I wouldn't miss tonight's revelations for anything." Catherine sauntered over, designer heels clicking. "Still working on that mysterious company? The one Dad's board said would never succeed." "Something like that." I smiled, thinking about the complex network of corporations that made Titan Global the hidden force behind American business. The room was buzzing with anticipation. Business reporters checked their cameras, executives huddled in groups, and my family basked in their moment of perceived triumph. "Poor Sarah," Diana murmured to her social circle. "She could have had everything at Chin Industries. Now she can't even afford a proper chair." My phone buzzed again, a message from our acquisition team. "Final paperwork complete on Chin Industries takeover. Ready for 9 p.m. announcement." Lisa appeared beside me. "Ma'am, Titan systems ready. All teams standing by." Through the ballroom's windows we could see Times Square preparing to switch. They thought they were here for a merger announcement. They had no idea they were about to witness the emergence of corporate America's true power. "Everyone gather round." Mark called out. "Dad's announcement will change business history." My father stood at the microphone, confidence radiating. "Friends, family, distinguished colleagues." The first phones began to buzz. Every screen in the ballroom suddenly switched to the Wall Street Journal feed. My father's words died in his throat as his own image was replaced by something very different. Titan Global revealed. America's hidden empire. Sarah Chin controls $12.8 billion corporation. Mystery owner behind major corporate acquisitions unmasked. The silence was absolute. The silence shattered as hundreds of phones began buzzing simultaneously. I remained calmly seated in my wobbly chair as chaos erupted around the room. The Wall Street Journal headline was just the beginning. Titan Global, led by CEO Sarah Chin, emerges as the controlling force behind America's largest corporations, the headline screamed. The secretive firm, operating through an intricate network of shell companies, has accumulated assets worth $12.8 billion while its founder maintained a deliberate low profile among corporate elite. That's impossible, Mark stammered, his glass of champagne slipping from his hand. Sarah's just a what, brother? I finally stood up from the wobbly chair. Failure. Or the woman who owns controlling stakes in most of the companies you beg for meetings with. The ballroom screens switched to live data feeds. Titan Global's true portfolio, our global reach, and the extensive list of corporations we quietly controlled. Each revelation caused another wave of gasps through the crowd. But we investigated every major player. Catherine's voice cracked. Your company wasn't even registered. Because I didn't want it to be found, I replied, straightening my basic suit that cost more than her car. Titan Global operates through over 1,000 entities, including, I might add, Chin Industries' largest corporate clients. My father stumbled forward, his usual confidence evaporating. The merger we're announcing won't be happening, I confirmed. Titan Global already owns controlling interests in both companies. In fact, we control the majority of corporations represented in this room. The Wall Street Journal article continued scrolling. Titan Global's portfolio includes majority stakes in over 60 major American corporations, making Sarah Chin one of the most influential hidden forces in global business. Diana clutched her champagne glass like a lifeline. 12.8 billion? But that would make you the most powerful private corporate owner in America, Michael said, emerging from the crowd in an impeccable suit. And that's before announcing our acquisition of Chin Industries. The business reporters in the room had recovered from their shock and were broadcasting live. In an unprecedented revelation, Titan Global has emerged as the controlling force behind America's largest corporations. Its founder, Sarah Chin, who her family had relegated to a broken chair at her own father's birthday celebration. Ma'am, Lisa approached, now in executive attire. The SEC chairman is requesting an emergency meeting. They're concerned about market implications. Through the windows, Times Square blazed with Titan Global's logo. The same logo Mark had mocked as amateur when I'd first shown it to him. All this time, Catherine whispered, while we were making jokes about your broken chair, I was building an empire, I said quietly. Every major corporate acquisition in America for the past 3 years? Orchestrated by Titan Global. Those mysterious buyouts Chin Industries couldn't explain? All us. Mark made one last desperate attempt. The corporate world won't accept this. They trust Chin Industries. Do they? I raised an eyebrow, projecting another set of data. Check your client list against Titan Global's subsidiaries. You've actually been working for me for years. You just didn't know it. Michael approached with a tablet. The SEC filing is live. Chin Industries stock will be suspended at market open, pending integration into Titan Global. And speaking of integration, I continued, every Chin Industries employee will receive 2 options tomorrow. Join Titan Global with quintupled compensation packages, or accept a generous severance. Unlike some people, I believe in rewarding talent regardless of where they sit. Diana's social climbing instincts kicked in. Sarah, darling, surely we can discuss this as family. Family. I turned to her. Like when you gave me the broken chair. Or when you served me cold food at my own father's birthday. The screens showed Titan Global's true scope. Corporate strategies that had revolutionized industries, technology that had transformed markets, and a business structure that prioritized innovation over appearance. Tomorrow morning, I addressed the stunned room, Titan Global begins its public phase. Chin Industries will become a subsidiary, its operations modernized, its culture completely rebuilt. My father found his voice again. You'll destroy everything I built. No, Dad. I'll improve everything you couldn't imagine. While you were teaching Mark how to network, I was building the future of business. While you were mocking my seating arrangement, I was revolutionizing corporate America. The daughter you gave the broken chair? She now controls your empire. Lisa appeared again. Ma'am, international markets are opening. They're requesting guidance on the transition. I checked my cheap watch, the same one Catherine had mocked earlier. Tell them Titan Global's protocols are now in effect. And prepare the conference room for tomorrow's global staff announcement. The ballroom had become a media circus. with cameras broadcasting the transformation live across America. Through the windows, the Titan Global logo glowed bright against the night sky, its power now unveiled for all to see. "Miss Chin," a final reporter called out, "one last question. Why maintain the facade for so long?" I looked back at the wobbly chair, thinking about the years of careful planning, the quiet acquisitions, the patient wait for this perfect moment. "Because true power doesn't need to announce itself," I replied. "Sometimes the best way to build something extraordinary is to let others underestimate you." While they were mocking my chair, I was quietly becoming their boss. As my helicopter lifted off from the building's helipad, I looked down at the transformed skyline. Sometimes the person they give the broken chair becomes the one who owns every seat in the room. Sometimes the greatest victory comes from letting them think you're unstable while you're actually conquering them. And as for that wobbly chair, I think I'll keep it. After all, some of the best deals in history were made by someone everyone underestimated, quietly building an empire while they weren't looking. The Titans continued to rise across New York's skyline, each glowing sign now a reminder that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one they tried to make uncomfortable. As the news continued to break across global markets, the headlines told the story that would reshape corporate history. The Titan rises: how a failed daughter built a $12.8 billion empire. America's new queen. Sarah Chen's path from broken chair to boardroom. From back table to corporate giant. The hidden force behind American business. Chen Industries' offices were buzzing with activity as employees discovered their new reality. The quintupled salaries and enhanced benefits sparked celebration among the staff, while the executive floor remained eerily quiet. Mark's corner office, the one he'd bragged about for years, was being transformed into Titan Global's innovation center. Catherine's precious executive dining room would become a technology hub. And my father's elaborate suite? The new employee development facility. "Ma'am," Michael reported, 99.5% of staff have accepted Titan Global's offers. The remaining 0.5% are exclusively from the old executive team. I smiled, thinking about the lessons in humility that would follow. Sometimes the best view of success isn't from the comfortable chair. It's from the wobbly one, watching, waiting, and building something revolutionary while others are busy showing off their stable positions. The Titan had revealed itself, and its power would forever change the landscape of American business.
The invitation sat on my desk, cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing, the same stationery my father had used to write my disavowal letter 15 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Please join us for dinner at the Harrison family estate," it read. "Your presence is urgently requested. My assistant, Marcus, watched as I turned the invitation over in my hands. "Are you going to go?" I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the Manhattan skyline from my corner office. "What do you think, Marcus? After 15 years of silence, they suddenly want a family dinner." My name is Olivia Harrison, though I haven't used that last name since I was 22. Back then, I was just the rebellious older daughter who dared to question my father's business practices. Now, I'm Olivia Chin, CEO of Phoenix Industries, one of the fastest-growing technology companies in the world. And I just signed the papers to buy out Harrison Technologies, my family's failing company. "The merger documents are ready," Marcus said, placing a thick folder on my desk. "Everything's set for next week's board meeting." I nodded, still staring at the invitation. "Have you seen the latest numbers from Harrison Tech?" Marcus pulled up a tablet, scrolling through reports. "Stock's down 60% from last year. Your sister's latest product launch was a disaster. Rumors are they won't make payroll next month." Jessica, my perfect younger sister, who'd always done everything right in our father's eyes. The one he'd chosen to run the company, claiming she had the right temperament for leadership. The same sister who hadn't spoken a word in my defense when he'd thrown me out. "Book me a flight to Boston," I said finally. "Let's see what they want." The Harrison estate hadn't changed in 15 years. Same manicured lawns, same imposing stone facade, same sense of old money and older expectations. As my car pulled up the circular driveway, I saw other vehicles already parked. Jessica's Range Rover, my father's Bentley. Marcus had insisted on having a car wait for me, just in case, he'd said. Smart man. The butler, not the same one from my childhood, opened the door before I could knock. "Miss Harrison," he greeted me formally. Ms. Chen. I corrected him. His eyes widened slightly, but he nodded. Of course. My apologies, Ms. Chen. The family is waiting in the study. The study, where all important Harrison family decisions were made, where my father had told me I was no longer welcome in his house or his company. I straightened my Chanel jacket and followed the butler down the familiar hallway. Family photos lined the walls. Jessica's graduation, her wedding, her taking over as CEO. My face was conspicuously absent, all traces of my existence carefully removed. The study door was open. Inside, my father sat behind his massive desk, looking older than I remembered but still radiating authority. Jessica perched on the leather sofa, her designer outfit not quite hiding her nervous fidgeting. And in a corner, my mother sat silently, just as she had the day I left. Olivia, my father said, standing. Thank you for coming. I remained in the doorway, not quite entering their space. Well, when the great Richard Harrison requests your presence, how can you refuse? Jessica flinched at my tone. Father's jaw tightened, but he pressed on. Please sit. We have much to discuss. I chose an armchair near the door, crossing my legs and waiting. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, my father spoke. We're aware of your success in recent years. I raised an eyebrow. My success? You mean building a billion-dollar company from scratch while you were grooming Jessica to run Harrison Tech into the ground? Olivia, please, my mother spoke for the first time. We're trying to have a civil conversation. Civil? I laughed. Like the civil way you all sat there while father threw me out, or the civil way you've pretended I don't exist for 15 years? Jessica stood up suddenly. We made mistakes, okay? Is that what you want to hear? We were wrong. I studied my sister, really looked at her for the first time. The perfect blonde hair was styled as immaculately as ever, but there were shadows under her eyes, tension in her shoulders. Running a failing company didn't look good on her. Why am I here? I asked, turning back to my father. He sighed heavily, looking every bit his 65 years. Harrison Technologies is in trouble. We need your help. And there it was. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement of the pain they caused. Just another business transaction. My help? I kept my voice neutral. What kind of help? We've seen what you've done with Phoenix Industries, he said. The innovation, the growth. We need that kind of thinking at Harrison Tech. I thought about the merger documents waiting in my briefcase, about the months of careful planning that had led to this moment. And what exactly are you offering? A partnership, Jessica jumped in. Co-CEO position. Equal say in the company's direction. I almost laughed. They had no idea how close they were to having no say at all. Let me get this straight, I said, standing. For 15 years, I was the family disappointment, the one who didn't understand business, the one who wasn't worthy of the Harrison name. But now that you're failing, suddenly I'm good enough. That's not fair, Jessica protested. Things are different now. Different? I turned to her. Different how? Because you failed at the job you were handed on a silver platter. Because you couldn't handle the responsibility you were so sure you deserved. Enough, my father's voice cracked like a whip. We're offering you a chance to come home, Olivia. To be part of the family again. I reached for my briefcase, pulling out the merger documents. That's a generous offer, Dad, but I have a counter-proposal. I placed the papers on his desk, watching as he picked them up. His face went pale as he read. What is this? The future of Harrison Technologies, I said calmly. Phoenix Industries has been buying shares through various subsidiaries for months. As of next week's board meeting, we'll own controlling interest in your company. Jessica grabbed the papers from our father's hands, her eyes scanning frantically. This is impossible. You can't. Can't what? I asked. Can't outmaneuver the mighty Harrisons? Can't build something bigger and better than you? Can't take everything you thought was yours? My father stood up, his face red with anger. You planned this. All of it. No, Dad, you planned this. The moment you decided Jessica was more worthy of your trust, your love, your legacy, you set this in motion. I just learned from your example. We'll fight this, he threatened. We have lawyers. Yes, you do, I agreed. The same lawyers who helped me structure this deal. Turns out loyalty can be bought. Another lesson I learned from you. The silence in the study was deafening. My mother had gone completely still, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Jessica looked like she might be sick. And my father, he just kept staring at the merger documents like they might somehow change if he glared at them long enough. The board meeting is next Tuesday, I said, standing up. I suggest you take the weekend to come to terms with this. Please. My mother finally spoke, her voice trembling. Olivia, we're your family. I turned to her, feeling the old pain surface. Family? Where was this family when Dad threw me out? When Jessica took everything that should have been shared between us? When I was struggling to build something of my own? You never needed our help, Jessica said quietly. Look at what you've built. I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. You think Phoenix Industries happened by magic? I worked 18-hour days for years. I lived in a tiny apartment, ate ramen noodles, and pitched to every investor who would listen. And you know what kept me going? Knowing that someday I'd be strong enough to make you all see what you threw away. My father finally found his voice. So this is revenge. No, Dad, this is business. Isn't that what you always taught us? Never let emotions cloud your judgment. I picked up my briefcase. Harrison Technologies is failing. Phoenix Industries can save it. The fact that I get to do it, that's just, what did you use to call it? A fortunate business opportunity. As I turned to leave, Jessica caught my arm. Wait, what's going to happen to us? To our jobs? I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The golden child who'd had everything handed to her. Who'd never had to fight for anything in her life. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. That depends, I said. Are you willing to earn your position for once? Before anyone could respond, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Marcus, right on schedule. I have to take this, I said, stepping into the hallway. Marcus? How did the board calls go? Better than expected, he reported. Most of them are already on board with the merger. They've seen the numbers. They know Harrison Tech can't survive without outside intervention. Good. And the press release? Ready to go after Tuesday's meeting. The business papers are already speculating about a possible buyout. Your father's mismanagement and Jessica's failed product launches have made it an easy sell. I ended the call and turned to find my mother standing in the doorway. You've thought of everything, haven't you? She asked softly. I had to, I replied. You all taught me that nothing less than perfection was acceptable. She flinched. We were wrong, Olivia. About so many things. Yes, you were. Is there any way to fix this? I studied her face, the same face that had watched silently as my father destroyed my life 15 years ago. Fix what, Mom? The company? The family? Some things can't be fixed. They can only be rebuilt. And rebuilding requires change. Back in the study, my father had moved to the window, staring out at the gardens where he'd once taught Jessica and me about the importance of the Harrison legacy. What are your terms? He asked without turning around. For the company? They're in the merger documents. For the family? I paused. That's more complicated. Jessica looked up from where she'd been reading the merger papers. You're not firing everyone, are you? There are people who depend on those jobs. Unlike you, I actually care about the employees, I said. Anyone who's qualified and willing to adapt will have a place in the new organization. But there will be changes, big ones. And us? She asked quietly. That depends on you. Are you willing to start at the bottom? Learn the business properly? Prove you deserve your position? She nodded slowly. I think I need to. Good, because that's your only option if you want to stay with the company. My father turned from the window. And me? You'll be offered a position on the board, non-executive, no direct management role. Your years of experience could be valuable, but you won't be running things anymore. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. For the first time in my life, I saw Richard Harrison accept defeat. The board meeting is at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, I said, gathering my things. I suggest you all be prepared. As I reached the door, my mother called out, Will you stay for dinner? I turned back, looking at my family, really looking at them. My father, proud but defeated. Jessica, scared but finally understanding. My mother, hopeful but uncertain. No, I said softly, not tonight. We have too much history for casual family dinners. But maybe someday. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings and preparations. Marcus kept me updated on the board members' responses. Most were enthusiastically supporting the merger, seeing it as their best chance to salvage their investments. On Monday evening, as I sat in my hotel room reviewing the final presentations, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Can we meet? Just us?" I considered ignoring it, but something made me respond. "Lobby bar, 30 minutes. She was already there when I arrived, nursing what looked like a very expensive glass of wine. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. "What do you want, Jessica?" She took a deep breath. "I wanted to say I'm sorry, not just for now, but for then. For not standing up for you when Dad threw you out. For taking everything without questioning it. For being exactly who they wanted me to be instead of who I should have been." I signaled the bartender for a drink. "And you're just realizing this now?" "No," she admitted. "I've known for years that I was in over my head. That I wasn't cut out for this, but I was too proud, too scared to admit it." "So what changed?" "You did. Seeing what you've built, how strong you've become, it made me realize what real leadership looks like." I studied my sister, looking for any sign of manipulation. But all I saw was exhaustion and genuine regret. "You know things can't go back to how they were," I said finally. "I know. I don't want them to. I want to learn, really learn from the ground up." "Will you teach me?" The next morning, I stood before the Harrison Technologies Board of Directors, my father and sister seated among them. As I presented Phoenix Industries' vision for the merged companies, I couldn't help but appreciate the symmetry of the moment. 15 years ago, in this same room, my father had told me I wasn't worthy of the family business. Now I was showing him exactly what he'd thrown away. The vote was unanimous. By noon, Harrison Technologies was officially part of Phoenix Industries. As the board members filed out, my father approached me. "You've won," he said simply. "This isn't about winning, Dad. It's about fixing what's broken, in the company and maybe eventually in the family." He nodded slowly. "I underestimated you. I was wrong." "Yes, you were. The question is, what are you going to do about it now?" He straightened his shoulders, and for a moment, I saw the man who had once taught me about business before pride and prejudice had poisoned everything. "I'm going to watch my daughter run the company I should have trusted her with 15 years ago," he said. "If she'll let me." It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was a start. 6 months later, I sat in what had once been my father's office, now my secondary workspace when I was in Boston. Jessica was presenting her analysis of a potential new product line, work she'd done from the ground up, starting as a junior analyst. "The market research suggests a strong demand," she concluded, "but we need to address these production challenges." I watched my sister confidently handle questions from the team, showing a grasp of details she'd never bothered with before. She was learning, growing, becoming the businesswoman she could have been years ago if she hadn't been handed everything too easily. After the meeting, she lingered behind. "That went well, right?" "It did," I agreed. "You've come a long way in 6 months." "Thanks to you," she said quietly, "for giving me a chance I probably didn't deserve." Everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves, Jessica. Even spoiled little sisters who take 15 years to grow up. She laughed, a real laugh, not the artificial one she perfected for society parties. "Mom asked me to remind you about Sunday dinner." I've been to exactly 2 family dinners in the past 6 months. They were still awkward, still heavy with unspoken words and lingering hurt. But they were also something else, a beginning. "Tell her maybe," I said. "I have a lot of work to do." "You always have a lot of work to do," Jessica pointed out. "But maybe that's not all there is to life. Maybe sometimes family dinner is just family dinner." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The entitled princess was gone, replaced by someone more real, more substantial. "Maybe," I agreed. "We'll see." Later that evening, as I worked late in the office, I found myself looking at an old photo I kept in my desk. Me and Jessica as children, before expectations and favoritism had torn us apart. We were smiling, arms around each other, unaware of the years of pain and separation ahead. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Board reports show Q3 profits up 40% since merger. Harrison Tech division exceeding all projections." I smiled, thinking about how far we'd all come. My father was learning to be a board member instead of a dictator. Jessica was earning her place instead of expecting it. Even my mother was finding her voice, slowly but surely. And me? I was learning that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's showing people exactly what they missed out on, and then maybe giving them a chance to make it right. I picked up my phone and texted Jessica, "Tell Mom I'll be there Sunday, but I'm not staying long." Her reply came quickly, "Long enough for dessert? She's making your favorite chocolate cake." I thought about our mother, trying so hard to rebuild bridges with chocolate cake and Sunday dinners. About my father, swallowing his pride to learn from the daughter he'd once dismissed. About Jessica, working her way up from the bottom with no complaints. "Fine," I texted back, but only because of the cake. Some might say I'd won. I had the company, the success, the vindication. But sitting there, looking at that old photo and thinking about Sunday dinner, I realized something important. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in defeating your enemies, but in giving them the chance to become something better, even if it takes 15 years and a corporate takeover to get there. The click of Victoria's designer heels echoed through the executive floor as she watched security lead me to the elevator, a triumphant smile playing across her perfectly painted lips. Behind her, my father stood in his office doorway, silent and unmoving, just as he'd been throughout my entire childhood. "I told you this would happen eventually," Victoria called after me. "You never belonged here, Olivia. You're just the help's daughter playing dress-up in a world that isn't yours." My name is Olivia Martinez, and at 29, I was being publicly humiliated and fired from Martinez Technologies, the company my father built, the company where I'd worked my way up from intern to director of operations over the past 8 years. All because my stepmother had finally found a way to get rid of me. The security guard, James, looked apologetic as he pressed the elevator button. He'd known me since I was a teenager, had watched me grow up in these halls. "I'm sorry, Miss Olivia," he whispered. "This isn't right." I squeezed his arm gently. "It's okay, James. Everything happens for a reason." Victoria's laugh followed me into the elevator. "Don't forget to clean out your desk, though there's probably nothing worth keeping, just like your mother." As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of my father, still standing there, still saying nothing. Some things never changed. My mother had been a housekeeper for the Martinez family when she met my father. Their romance had scandalized Houston's elite social circles, the wealthy businessmen falling for the help. But they'd married anyway, and for a few brief years, we'd been happy. Then Mom got sick. Cancer. She died when I was 10, and within a year, Victoria had swooped in with her designer wardrobe and social connections, determined to erase any trace of the woman who came before her. I made my way to my office, former office now, ignoring the shocked stares and whispers of my colleagues. My team looked devastated. They knew what this meant. Victoria would replace me with someone of her choosing, probably one of her socialite friends' children who knew nothing about actually running a company. Ms. Martinez, my assistant Sarah, approached, tears in her eyes. "We heard what happened. It's not fair. You've done more for this company than anyone." I started packing my personal items into a box, keeping my movements calm and deliberate. Life isn't always fair, Sarah. But sometimes what seems like an ending is actually a beginning. "What will you do?" she asked, helping me pack. I pulled a small leather notebook from my desk drawer, my mother's old recipe book, the one thing of hers I kept with me always. But it wasn't just recipes inside. Between the pages of family dishes were other notes, other plans, ones Victoria never knew about. "Don't worry about me," I said, smiling slightly. "I've been preparing for this day longer than Victoria realizes." The truth was, I'd known this was coming. Victoria had been trying to push me out for years, but I'd been too good at my job, too valuable to the company's success for her to find a reason. Until now. She finally managed to frame me for financial misconduct. Doctored documents, falsified signatures, a perfect paper trail that made it look like I'd been embezzling company funds. It was expertly done. I had to admire her thoroughness, even as it made my blood boil. What Victoria didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything. Every illegal transaction she'd made, every penny she'd siphoned from the company accounts, every shady deal she'd orchestrated behind my father's back. I'd learned from my mother that sometimes the best defense was patience, observation, and meticulous record-keeping. As I walked out of Martinez Technologies for what felt like the last time, I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. "Daniel? It's time. Are you ready?" Daniel Chen had been my best friend since college and was now one of the top corporate lawyers in Houston. He'd been helping me build my case against Victoria for the past 2 years. Everything's ready, he confirmed. The evidence is solid. Are you sure you want to do this? Once we start, there's no going back. I paused on the sidewalk, looking up at the gleaming tower that housed my father's company, my family's legacy. I'm sure, I said firmly. Victoria thinks she's won, that she's finally gotten rid of the embarrassing reminder of my father's first marriage. But she's about to learn that underestimating me was the biggest mistake she could have made. That evening, I sat in my apartment reviewing everything we gathered. The documentation was damning. Offshore accounts, fraudulent contracts, years of financial manipulation that would make any auditor's head spin. Victoria had been treating the company like her personal piggy bank, all while maintaining her image as the perfect corporate wife. My phone buzzed with messages from my team. Expressions of support, offers to quit and protest, promises to help however they could. I appreciated their loyalty but told them to stay put. I needed eyes and ears inside the company for what was coming next. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. When I opened it, I found Maria, one of the company's longtime cleaning staff, and my mother's best friend. Menina, she said, pulling me into a tight hug. I just heard that which finally did it. I hugged her back, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume, the same one my mother used to wear. It's okay, Maria. I'm okay. She pulled back, studying my face with knowing eyes. You have that look, the same one your mother used to get when she was planning something. What are you going to do? I led her inside, showing her the files spread across my dining room table. Everything Victoria never wanted anyone to find. Every corrupt deal, every stolen dollar, every lie she's told my father and the board. Maria's eyes widened as she looked through the documents. Dios mío, how long have you been collecting this? Since the day I overheard her talking about getting rid of me, I said, remembering that moment 2 years ago when I accidentally stumbled upon Victoria's phone conversation. She said I was an embarrassment to the family name, that she'd never rest until I was gone. Like your mother, Maria said quietly. She did the same thing to Anna, made her life so difficult that she felt she had to quit, even before she got sick. I hadn't known that. Another piece of the puzzle, another reason to make sure Victoria faced consequences for her actions. Manana, Maria continued, is the annual board meeting. Victoria's been bragging to everyone about her big presentation, how she's going to announce changes that will modernize the company. I smiled. I know. And she has no idea that while she's been planning my downfall, I've been planning something much bigger. The next morning, I dressed carefully in my best suit, the one my father had given me when I was promoted to director of operations. Victoria might think I was just the maid's daughter, but I was also Richard Martinez's daughter, and it was time everyone remembered that. I checked my phone, messages from Daniel confirming everything was in place, updates from my allies inside the company, and one missed call from my father. I ignored it. He'd had years to stand up for me, to see what his wife was doing. His silence had been his choice. As I grabbed my keys and the thick file of evidence we compiled, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I saw my mother's eyes looking back at me, determined, fierce, unafraid. She taught me to stand up for myself, to fight for what was right. Victoria was about to learn exactly what that meant. Game on, I whispered, heading out the door. It was time to take back everything Victoria thought she could steal from me, my job, my reputation, and my family's legacy. The Martinez Technologies wardroom was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the Houston skyline. As I rode up in the service elevator, the only way I could enter without being stopped by security, I thought about how many times I'd sat in that room, presenting quarterly reports while Victoria watched me like a hawk, waiting for me to make a mistake. Ready? Daniel texted. Born ready. I replied. Maria had let me in through the service entrance, just like she used to do when I was a kid visiting my father at work. Now she gave me a fierce hug before pointing me toward the private stairwell that led to the executive floor. Your mother would be so proud, she whispered. I checked my watch, 9:55 a.m. Victoria would be starting her presentation at 10 o'clock, announcing my crimes to the board and presenting her plan to save the company from further corruption. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been so infuriating. Through the crack in the boardroom door, I could see them assembling. The board members in their expensive suits, my father at the head of the table, and Victoria standing at the front, perfect as always in her designer dress and pearls. She was smiling that smile I knew so well, the one that meant she thought she'd won. At exactly 10 o'clock, she began. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, her voice carried clearly through the door. I've called this emergency meeting to address a serious situation. As you may have heard, yesterday we were forced to terminate Olivia Martinez's employment due to evidence of significant financial misconduct. Murmurs rippled through the room. I could see some board members shaking their heads. They'd worked with me for years, trusted me. I know this comes as a shock, Victoria continued, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. We all wanted to believe in Richard's daughter, despite her humble origins. But the evidence is clear. She clicked to the first slide of her presentation. Doctored bank statements and forged documents that made it look like I'd been stealing from the company for years. That was my cue. I pushed open the boardroom doors, Daniel right behind me, and walked in as if I owned the place. You're right about one thing, Victoria. The evidence is very clear. The room erupted in chaos. Victoria's face went pale, then red with fury. Security, she shouted. This is a private meeting. Actually, Daniel stepped forward, placing his briefcase on the table. As the company's legal counsel, I've invited Ms. Martinez to present some evidence of her own. My father finally spoke, his voice tired. Olivia, what are you doing here? Something I should have done a long time ago, I replied, meeting his gaze. Showing you the truth about your wife. Victoria laughed, but I could hear the nervousness behind it. This is ridiculous. The board has already seen the evidence of her crimes. Viewing these, I pulled out copies of the documents she used to frame me. The ones with forged signatures and doctored dates. Interesting how the timestamps on all the digital files show they were created last week, isn't it? The board members started shuffling through their copies, looking more closely at the dates. But that's not why I'm here. I continued, pulling out my own file. I'm here to show the board exactly what Victoria has been doing with company money for the past 5 years. What followed was the most satisfying 30 minutes of my life. Screen by screen, document by document, I laid out Victoria's years of corruption. The offshore accounts, the fake consulting firms she created to funnel money to herself, the kickbacks from vendors. The evidence was overwhelming and ironclad. This is nonsense, Victoria sputtered, but her perfect composure was cracking. Richard, are you going to let her do this to me? To us? My father sat there, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Is this true, Victoria? Of course not. She's lying just like her mother always did. The words hung in the air like poison. I saw my father flinch, saw real anger cross his face for the first time. Don't, he said quietly. Don't you dare speak about Anna that way. Victoria must have realized her mistake because she quickly changed tactics. Richard, darling, she's just trying to cause trouble. You know how she's always been jealous of our relationship. Like you were jealous of my mother? I cut in. Jealous enough to make her life so miserable that she quit her job here. Maria told me everything, Victoria. How you tormented her, spread rumors about her, even before she got sick. Maria? Victoria's eyes narrowed. The cleaning woman? You're believing gossip from servants now. No, I said calmly. I'm believing the evidence. Like this recorded conversation from last month. I played the audio file, Victoria's own voice discussing her plans to frame me to get rid of the embarrassing reminder of my father's first marriage once and for all. The color drained from her face as her own words filled the room. My father stood up slowly, his hands shaking. Get out, he said to Victoria. Richard, get out. His voice cracked like thunder. Security will escort you from the building. The police have already been notified about the fraud. Victoria looked around wildly, but found no allies. The board members were already going through the evidence, their faces grim. She grabbed her bag and ran from the room, her perfect composure finally shattered. In the silence that followed, my father turned to me. Olivia, Don't, I said softly. Not now. There's still work to do. The next few hours were a blur of police statements, emergency board meetings, and damage control. Victoria was arrested trying to board a private plane to the Cayman Islands. The company's legal team worked overtime to recover the stolen funds. My reputation was formally cleared. A week later, I sat in my old office, my office again, looking out over the city. A knock at the door made me turn. "Got a minute?" my father asked. I nodded, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. He sat down heavily, looking somehow both older and lighter than he had in years. "I failed you," he said simply. "I failed your mother. I let Victoria poison everything because I was too weak to see what was happening." "Yes," I agreed, "you did." He nodded, accepting the truth of it. "I can't change the past. But I want you to know, your mother would be so proud of you, not just for exposing Victoria, but for everything you've built here, everything you've become." I felt tears prick at my eyes but held them back. I learned from her. She taught me to be strong, to fight for what's right. Even when she was sick, she never stopped fighting. "She did," he smiled sadly. "And she gave that strength to you." We sat in silence for a moment, years of unspoken words hanging between us. "The board wants to make you CEO," he said finally. "They've lost faith in my judgment, and frankly, I don't blame them. The company needs new leadership. Better leadership." I stared at him stunned. "Dad, you earned it, Olivia. Not because you're my daughter, but because you're the best person for the job. You protected this company when I couldn't. You deserve to lead it." 2 months later, I stood in front of the company's employees, making my first speech as CEO of Martinez Technologies. The changes we'd made were already showing results: transparency initiatives, new ethical guidelines, a foundation to provide educational opportunities for employees' children. As I looked out over the crowd, I saw Maria beaming proudly from the back. I saw my old team, now in leadership positions they'd earned. I saw my father, retired but finally present in a way he hadn't been for years. And in my mind, I saw my mother, not the way she looked when she was sick, but the way she was when I was small. Strong, loving, unafraid to stand up for what was right. Victoria had thought she could erase us, the maid and her daughter, the embarrassing reminder of a past she wanted to forget. Instead, she'd only made us stronger. Sometimes justice comes not in grand gestures, but in quiet moments of truth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies, but about building something better from the ashes of what they tried to destroy. As I finished my speech and the applause filled the room, I touched the small recipe book in my pocket, my mother's legacy, now mine to carry forward. Victoria had never understood that true strength doesn't come from money or status or power. It comes from knowing who you are and standing firm in that truth, no matter what storms come your way.